He was the most feared man of the 7 seas. His name, Edward Teach, but you know him as Blackbeard, a pirate so ruthless that he would set his own beard ablaze to terrorize his victims. The flickering flames illuminating his face in the darkness, creating a demonic appearance that struck fear into the hearts of even the bravest sailors. But was this legend merely smoke and mirrors? Or was there something even darker lurking behind the myth? In the early 18th century, the Caribbean was a battleground where pirates like Blackbeard openly challenged mighty empires. He wasn't just another criminal prowling the waters. He was a ruthless strategist who commanded the most powerful vessel of his time, the Queen Anne's Revenge. This floating fortress, bristling with 40 cannons, became the nightmare of merchant ships throughout the Atlantic. But how did an ordinary man transform himself into the very spectre of death upon the oceans? Some say he was born wicked, others claim the sea itself corrupted him. What we do know is that Blackbeard understood something most pirates never grasped, that fear was a weapon more powerful than any blade or pistol. When his massive silhouette appeared on the horizon, with smoke billowing from his beard and hat, captains would surrender without firing a single shot. His reputation alone was enough to conquer ships without spilling a drop of blood. If you love history and want to uncover the secrets of the most infamous pirates from the golden age of piracy, like this video, subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles and don't miss a single episode. Join us as we sail through the blood-soaked waters of the past and discover how Edward Teach became the legend we know today as Blackbeard. Long before the name Blackbeard struck terror into seafarers' hearts, Edward Teach was just another weathered face aboard a merchant vessel. Born around 1680 in Bristol, England, little is known about his early life, as if history itself wanted to shroud his origins in mystery. What we do know is that, like many men of his time, Teach answered the call of the sea as a young man, learning the ropes and mastering navigation during the tumultuous years of the War of Spanish Succession. But the transition from honest sailor to infamous pirate came in 1716, when Teach joined the crew of Benjamin Hornigold, an established pirate captain operating out of Nassau. Under Hornigold's tutelage, Teach learned not just the brutal craft of piracy, but something far more valuable, the art of intimidation. While serving as Hornigold's first mate, Teach demonstrated a natural talent for leadership and an uncanny understanding of human psychology. The men respected him, but more importantly, they feared him. When Hornigold eventually offered Teach command of a sloop they had captured, the legend truly began to take shape. What made Edward Teach different from the countless other pirates roaming the Caribbean waters was his deliberate creation of a terrifying persona. While most pirates relied solely on their weapons and numbers, Teach weaponized his very appearance. He grew his beard unusually long and thick, braiding it with black ribbons that framed his face like some hellish portrait. But his most ingenious and horrifying innovation was more theatrical than practical. Before engaging an enemy vessel, Teach would weave slow-burning fuses into his massive beard and set them alight. Imagine the sight, a towering figure emerging through the gunpowder smoke, his face partially obscured by a wild black beard crackling with flames, eyes gleaming with malice beneath a wide-brimmed hat that also smoldered with burning matchcord. To complete this nightmarish image, he strapped multiple pistols across his chest, along with daggers and a cutlass always at the ready. One witness described him as a figure from hell itself, come to claim the souls of unfortunate sailors. This wasn't mere vanity or madness, it was calculated strategy. He didn't just want to rob his victims, wrote one colonial governor who encountered him. He wanted them to surrender before a single shot was fired. And it worked. Ships would strike their colors at the mere sight of his flag, captains choosing to hand over their cargo rather than face the demon that was Edward Teach. In an age where superstition ran deep among sailors, Blackbeard cultivated an image so terrifying that it became his greatest weapon, more effective than any cannon or blade. He understood that fear paralyzes reason, and a frightened enemy is already half defeated. By early 1717, Blackbeard had proven himself as a formidable pirate captain, but he still lacked something essential to cement his growing legend, a flagship worthy of his terrifying reputation. Fate delivered his opportunity in November of that year off the island of Martinique, when his small flotilla encountered a large French slave ship called La Concorde. The French vessel was no easy prey. Built for the dangerous Atlantic crossing, La Concorde was sturdy, well-armed, and manned by experienced sailors, but they were weakened by a difficult voyage. Disease had claimed several crew members, and those remaining were exhausted. Blackbeard, sensing vulnerability, ordered an attack. After a brief but fierce exchange of cannon fire, the French captain surrendered his ship. What Blackbeard saw in this captured vessel was far more than just another prize. He recognized its potential immediately. Taking command of the ship himself, he renamed it the Queen Anne's Revenge, a nod to the recently ended War of Spanish Succession, also known as Queen Anne's War. Some historians believe the name was also a political statement, suggesting Blackbeard's possible Jacobite sympathies supporting the exiled Stuart dynasty. Over the following months, Blackbeard transformed this former slave ship into a floating fortress, unlike anything the Caribbean had ever seen. He outfitted it with 40 cannons, an extraordinary number that gave the Queen Anne's Revenge firepower comparable to a small naval warship. Most pirate vessels carried between 12 and 24 guns, making Blackbeard's flagship a true leviathan of the seas. The Queen Anne's Revenge wasn't just powerful, it was designed to terrify. Blackbeard installed lanterns strategically around the ship to create an eerie glow at night. The black flag, flying from its mast, depicted a skeleton holding an hourglass in one hand and spearing a bleeding heart with the other. A clear message that time was running out for anyone who dared to resist. With his new flagship, Blackbeard's tactics evolved. He no longer needed to rely solely on surprise attacks or night raids. Now he could confront merchant ships head-on, knowing they stood little chance against his overwhelming firepower. Often the mere sight of the Queen Anne's Revenge on the horizon was enough to convince other captains to surrender without a fight. For 18 months, this floating nightmare prowled the Caribbean and the eastern seaboard of America, becoming the most feared vessel in the Atlantic. At the height of his power, Blackbeard commanded a small fleet with the Queen Anne's Revenge as its crown jewel, blockading entire ports and challenging the naval might of empires. Here's something remarkable. The Queen Anne's Revenge was discovered by marine archaeologists in 1996, buried under the sandy waters near Beaufort, North Carolina. The wreck has yielded over 400,000 artifacts, from cannons and anchors to medical tools and even tiny gold dust particles. But the legendary treasure that many believe Blackbeard accumulated throughout his bloody career has never been found. Some speculate that Blackbeard deliberately ran the ship aground in 1718 as part of an elaborate scheme to defraud his own crew, taking the most valuable treasures with him while marooning unwanted pirates. Others believe the ship's greatest treasures remain hidden somewhere along the North Carolina coast, perhaps on Ocracoke Island, where Blackbeard was known to retreat between raids. Whatever happened to its treasures, the Queen Anne's Revenge stands as the perfect symbol of Blackbeard's genius, taking something already formidable and transforming it into something legendary, a weapon of war that became an extension of his own terrifying persona. In May of 1718, Blackbeard executed what many historians consider his most audacious operation, one that would cement his legacy not just as a fearsome pirate, but as a brilliant strategist. The target was Charleston, South Carolina, one of the wealthiest and most important ports in British America. What happened next was unprecedented in colonial history. Arriving with a small flotilla led by the Queen Anne's Revenge, Blackbeard positioned his ships at the entrance to Charleston Harbor, effectively shutting down all maritime traffic. For an entire week, one of the busiest ports in the colonies came to a complete standstill. No ships could enter or leave without confronting the most feared pirate in the Atlantic. During this bold blockade, Blackbeard's men captured several vessels attempting to enter or leave the harbor. But it wasn't gold or cargo he was after this time. His plan was far more sophisticated. Among the captured passengers was Samuel Wragg, a prominent member of the South Carolina Council, along with his young son and several other wealthy citizens of Charleston. These weren't random hostages. Blackbeard had deliberately targeted the elite of colonial society. He then sent a chilling message to Governor Robert Johnson. The hostages would be released unharmed, but only if the governor provided something specific, a chest of medicines. Yes, medicines. Not gold, not silver, not priceless jewels, but medical supplies worth about £300. To the bewildered colonial officials, this demand seemed bizarre. Why would the most notorious pirate in the New World risk everything for a box of remedies? Some historians believe Blackbeard's crew was suffering from syphilis or some other disease common among sailors of the time. Others suggest it was a calculated move to demonstrate his power, proving he could force a colonial government to bend to his will over something seemingly trivial. Perhaps it was both. What's truly remarkable about this episode is that throughout the entire blockade, not a single hostage was harmed. Despite his fearsome reputation, Blackbeard treated his prisoners with relative courtesy. When one hostage, a Mr. Marks, was robbed of his fine clothes by Blackbeard's crew, the pirate captain personally intervened and returned the man's belongings. When the authorities finally delivered the requested medicine, Blackbeard kept his word. He released all the hostages unharmed and lifted the blockade, disappearing back into the vast Atlantic with his fleet. For days afterward, Charleston remained paralyzed by fear, expecting the pirates to return at any moment. This entire operation reveals the true genius behind Blackbeard's terror campaign. It was a psychological game, wrote one contemporary observer. He understood that fear was far more effective than violence. By demonstrating he could paralyze an entire colonial port without firing a single shot, Blackbeard elevated piracy from mere robbery to psychological warfare. And here's something that might surprise you. Did you know that Blackbeard almost never killed his prisoners? Despite his bloodthirsty reputation, there are virtually no verified accounts of him murdering captives. He preferred to terrorize rather than fight, using his horrifying appearance and reputation to avoid combat altogether. This strategy not only preserved his crew and ships, but magnified his legend with each bloodless victory. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the tactical genius of history's most infamous pirate, make sure to like and share this video. Subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles for more fascinating stories from history's most colorful characters. And hey, let us know in the comments, which legendary pirate would you like to see featured in our next video? Captain Kidd, Anne Bonny, the infamous Bartholomew Roberts? Drop your suggestions below. By autumn of 1718, Blackbeard's reign of terror had reached its zenith, but dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. The colonial authorities had finally had enough. Governor Alexander Spotswood of Virginia, tired of the pirates' impunity and fearing Blackbeard might establish a permanent pirate haven in North Carolina, decided to take matters into his own hands. Even though Blackbeard was technically outside his jurisdiction, Spotswood dispatched 2 hired sloops under the command of Lieutenant Robert Maynard of the Royal Navy. Maynard was everything Blackbeard was not: disciplined, methodical, and utterly dedicated to duty. The lieutenant had served with distinction in the War of Spanish Succession and was known for his cool head and strategic brilliance. If anyone could bring down the notorious pirate, it was him. On November 22nd, 1718, Maynard's vessels found Blackbeard's ship, the Adventure, anchored in a secluded inlet near Ocracoke Island off the coast of North Carolina. The location was no accident. Blackbeard had chosen this sheltered spot as a temporary refuge, believing the shallow waters would protect him from large naval vessels. What he didn't anticipate was Spotswood's determination to end his career once and for all. As dawn broke over the quiet waters, Maynard's ships appeared on the horizon. Blackbeard, caught off guard but never one to flee, prepared for battle. According to eyewitness accounts, he sat calmly drinking with a visiting merchant captain when informed of the approaching vessels. "If they won't leave us alone," he reportedly said, raising a glass, "we'll give them a warm reception in hell." What followed was one of the most brutal naval battles of the golden age of piracy. Blackbeard opened fire first, devastating one of Maynard's sloops. But the lieutenant had prepared a cunning trap. On his flagship, he ordered most of his men below decks, creating the illusion that his crew had been decimated by Blackbeard's initial volley. Taking the bait, Blackbeard brought his vessel alongside Maynard's and led his crew aboard, expecting an easy victory. Instead, Maynard's hidden men suddenly erupted from below, and the deck became a chaotic battlefield of pistol smoke, clashing swords, and desperate men fighting for their lives. In the center of this maelstrom stood Blackbeard himself, a vision of hell with his smoking beard and multiple weapons. He fought like a man possessed, or perhaps like one who knew his legend required a spectacular ending. Accounts from survivors describe him roaring with each swing of his cutlass, seeming almost invulnerable as he cut down one attacker after another. The inevitable confrontation came when Blackbeard and Maynard found themselves face to face amid the chaos. Both men fired their pistols. Maynard's shot struck home, but Blackbeard fought on. As they clashed with swords, the pirate's cutlass shattered Maynard's sword guard, cutting the lieutenant's fingers. But before Blackbeard could deliver a killing blow, one of Maynard's men slashed the pirate's throat from behind. Even with a grievous neck wound, Blackbeard continued fighting. According to the official report, he absorbed 5 pistol shots and 20 sword wounds before finally collapsing on the deck. As he fell, legend says he glared at Maynard and growled, "Well done, lad, but now you'll lay with the devil." When the smoke cleared, more than a third of the combatants lay dead or wounded. Maynard ordered his surgeon to sever Blackbeard's head, which was hung from the bowsprit of his sloop as proof of victory. The pirate's headless body was reportedly thrown overboard, where witnesses claimed it swam around the ship 3 times before sinking into the depths, a final supernatural chapter to the Blackbeard legend. Maynard returned to Virginia with his grisly trophy, which was displayed on a pike at the entrance to Hampton Roads Harbor as a warning to other pirates. For years afterward, sailors claimed they could hear Blackbeard's voice in the wind on stormy nights, still searching for his missing head. The death of Edward Teach was as spectacular as his life had been. He died as he had lived, violently, defiantly, and with such extraordinary resistance to death that it only enhanced his posthumous legend. Blackbeard may have fallen that November day, but in many ways his myth was just beginning. More than 300 years have passed since Blackbeard's blood stained the waters off Ocracoke Island, yet his shadow still looms large over the coastal waters of North Carolina. While most pirates faded into the dusty pages of history books, Edward Teach remains as vivid in our collective imagination as the flames that once flickered in his infamous beard. What makes Blackbeard's legacy so enduring? Perhaps it's the mystery that continues to surround him. Unlike many of his contemporaries, he left behind no journals, no letters, no personal accounts. Everything we know comes from those who feared him, fought him, or heard tales about him, making the line between man and myth impossible to distinguish. Then there's the tantalizing mystery of his treasure. For centuries, treasure hunters have combed the shores and waters around Ocracoke Island, driven by persistent rumors that Blackbeard buried his vast wealth somewhere in its sandy soil. Some believe it lies in a hidden cave accessible only at certain tides. Others claim it's buried beneath an old oak tree, marked by secret symbols only a true pirate could recognize. In the 1930s, a local fisherman claimed to have discovered an ancient chest filled with silver coins near Springer's Point on Ocracoke. The discovery sparked a treasure-hunting frenzy that continues to this day. Modern equipment, metal detectors, ground-penetrating radar, and sophisticated diving gear has been employed in the search, yet Blackbeard's main treasure hoard, if it exists at all, remains elusive. Perhaps the most intriguing theory suggests there never was a buried treasure. Some historians believe Blackbeard spent his plunder as quickly as he acquired it, lavishing it on drink, women, and bribes to colonial officials who turned a blind eye to his activities. Others suggest he may have hidden his wealth not in the ground, but in plain sight, investing it in legitimate businesses through trusted associates, a common practice among pirates who hope to eventually retire from their dangerous profession. But Blackbeard's true legacy isn't measured in gold or silver. It's found in how thoroughly he transformed the popular image of piracy itself. When we picture a pirate today, with flowing dark beard, pistols strapped across the chest, and a fierce countenance, we are essentially picturing Edward Teach. He created the archetype that would be immortalized centuries later in literature, film, and countless Halloween costumes. What made him so effective wasn't just his ferocity in battle or his skill as a navigator. It was his profound understanding of human psychology. Blackbeard became a legend because he understood the power of theater, noted one 18th century writer, and that is more frightening than any cannon. He grasped that perception is reality, that fear can accomplish what violence alone cannot, and that a carefully cultivated reputation could be more valuable than a ship full of treasure. This psychological insight made him not just a successful pirate, but a revolutionary one. He didn't just rob ships. He created an entire persona designed to maximize his effectiveness with minimal bloodshed. In an age before mass media, he became one of the first individuals to deliberately craft a public image to serve his purposes, a practice that politicians, celebrities, and influencers continue to this day. The waters where Blackbeard once sailed are now crowded with tourist boats. Ocracoke Island hosts an annual Blackbeard's Pirate Jamboree, drawing thousands of visitors. Museums display artifacts recovered from the Queen Anne's Revenge. Gift shops sell Blackbeard t-shirts, coffee mugs, and replica flags. His image has been sanitized and commercialized, yet something of his dangerous charisma remains intact. Perhaps Edward Teach's greatest triumph wasn't any particular act of piracy, but the fact that 3 centuries after his death, we're still telling his story. In that way, the man who lived by fear achieved a kind of immortality through fascination. The head that once hung from Maynard's bowsprit as a warning has become an enduring symbol of rebellion against authority, of freedom on the high seas, and of the thin line that separates monster from legend. Blackbeard may have died at Ocracoke in 1718, but in the misty realm where history meets mythology, Edward Teach still sails the Carolina coast, his beard still smoking, forever searching for his next prize, and perhaps laughing at how thoroughly he's captured our imagination. Blackbeard wasn't just another pirate sailing the crowded waters of the Caribbean. He was a master psychologist who rewrote the rules of piracy itself. While his contemporaries relied primarily on brute force, Edward Teach understood something far more profound, that perception shapes reality, and fear is the most potent weapon in any arsenal. His legend endures not because of exceptional cruelty. Indeed, historical records suggest he rarely killed his captives, but because of his remarkable ability to transform fear into power. With his flaming beard, arsenal of weapons, and carefully cultivated reputation, he created an image so terrifying that entire cities surrendered at the mere mention of his name. What's perhaps most fascinating about Blackbeard is how modern his approach feels. In an age before mass media, he intuitively grasped concepts that wouldn't be formally understood for centuries: psychological warfare, brand building, and the power of visual storytelling. He wasn't just a pirate. He was a pioneer of psychological manipulation who understood that controlling how others perceive you is often more valuable than any treasure. In the turbulent waters of the early 18th century, where empires clashed and fortunes were made and lost in the blink of an eye, Edward Teach found a way to not only survive, but to thrive, and to ensure that centuries after his violent death, we would still be telling his story. And what about you? Had you been born in those lawless times, would you have had the courage to face the unforgiving seas? Would you have challenged the established order like Blackbeard, or fought to maintain it like Lieutenant Maynard? The golden age of piracy reminds us that history isn't just a parade of dates and facts. It's a mirror that reflects our own values, fears, and fascinations. If you enjoyed diving into the psychology behind history's most notorious pirate, leave a like on this video and share it with friends who appreciate the deeper stories behind historical legends. Subscribe to Modern Age Chronicles for more fascinating explorations of the characters and events that shaped the modern world. From the scientific revolutions that changed our understanding of the universe to the colonial conflicts that redrew the map of our planet, we are dedicated to bringing history's most compelling stories to life. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the smoke and shadow of Blackbeard's legend. Until our next historical adventure, keep your compass true and your mind open to the lessons hidden in the past.